Stay on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of The Cut. I am your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Definitely a long first day back to work of the week, and I'm sure it'll be a very fun week of doing not a lot. Let's be real.
Yeah. You're in a slow season. I'm in a busy season, and it's weird because, I'm not always busy at work. Working in recreation is cool. I would advocate for that. If you guys are looking for new careers, come work in recreation. It's fun. Or talk about football, and that's what we are here to do tonight. We have been off for a couple of weeks. We are probably missing some news items when we get to it just because a lot has happened, but it's maybe not as current. But we are here to talk through Dynasty quarterback rankings. So we put together a consensus with 4 of our analysts, including the 2 of us, and we're going to kind of talk through our consensus rankings and how they stack up against the expert consensus rankings for Fantasy Pros, and kind of talk through why maybe we're higher or lower on some of the guys, why we have guys ranked the way they are, things like that. But a lot has happened, like I said, so let's just jump right into some NFL news. The main storyline right now is the NFL owners. So right now they're counting votes to determine if Dan Snyder is going to be forced out, whether he's going to have to sell the team. I don't even know if he'll be in charge of the sale or what will exactly happen. Randy, talk to me about that. How do you know any details on this other than the NFL owners are counting votes?
So I know this is like a bylaw into being, it's like signing on to be an owner is if they deem that you are doing stuff detrimental to the league, just like they do with players. It's all about, representing the shield. So if they think you are being a detriment to the league, which I think many would agree Dan Snyder has been over the last years. I don't even know how many long years, but it's become more apparent yet again of late. And he's been in refusal to sell, even though it seems like multiple times they could have sold, and he could have just been out of the spotlight for a long time. So basically, they're just making sure it's basically Goodell and the owners reaching out to say, "Hey, is everyone okay with us just getting rid of this guy?" He's got pretty much no say in the matter. If they do say he's forced to sell, I do believe he still has some say in what the price would be. But I also think the NFL has some negotiating power in that as well. It's all in like the owners' bylaws, which we're not necessarily privy to. I've pretty much just seen people talk about this, not really break it down. So that's pretty much the best I could break it down without trying to dive much deeper.
Yeah, I think what it is it's been an inevitability. Shout out Thanos, shout out our Marvel Talk segment that we won't get to tonight, but it's been inevitable that he is not going to be the owner of that football team, or the Commanders, I guess is what they're called. But yeah, I mean, they need to move on. I think that we've known about the history and whatnot of Dan Snyder and he's a bad guy. He's just a bad guy, and they need to kind of not have bad guys owning NFL teams. We have enough of them already, and so, I mean, I think back, we're Browns fans to when Jimmy Haslam first bought the Browns and all the stuff with Flying J popped up. Most NFL owners are bad, but Dan Snyder is extra bad. So I think it'll be a nice little regime change there. I think that workplace is as toxic as it can possibly get, and so I think they want to move away from that as well.
Yeah, they need to pretty much rebuild that whole management staff. Not necessarily the front organization people, but it just depends. And yeah, this, even with them forcing him, I don't foresee this really impacting much of the season, because
Right.
just the process alone after a deal is made with signing paperwork with that much money, it's going to take months. So
Oh, yeah.
this is something expecting, next year to have new owners for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, which will be good. All right. Next thing on the docket is OTAs. OTAs are starting. It's an exciting time. There have been some good reports. I have to mention that Justin Fields is drawing rave reviews from his coaches with the Chicago Bears. Everyone's panicking about Justin Fields. We'll talk about him a little bit later. And then kind of the opposite is happening with Trey Lance, and everyone's saying how crucial these OTAs are for the sophomore quarterback. And I find that to be a weird trade strategy because that's all it is. I don't buy into Trey Lance's struggles, but the main news coming out from OTAs is that we have a couple of big stars sitting out of OTAs, Baker Mayfield. No, I'm just kidding. Kyler Murray and Deebo Samuel. I said stars. Baker's probably not that. Kyler Murray is sitting out of OTAs, and there was a report that came out today that the contract has been kind of put on the back burners. Everything has gone quiet on that front. And so I don't know how long this holdout is going to last for Kyler. What do you think?
We will see. If you remember, I believe it was last month they actually picked up his 5th-year option as well, which locks him in for 2 more years, including
Yeah.
this year, to where he was basically on the last year of his deal, looking to well, maybe even more. I can't even remember, honestly, off the top of my head. Basically, the Cardinals have his rights locked up for the next at least couple years, and Kyler wants to be paid his value, which is pretty fair. He's gone about it a little bit the wrong way, at least in most people's eyes. But we don't know what happened behind the scenes. Maybe there was just months and months of hitting a brick wall and too much frustration, and this was Kyler's next step into trying to get his deal. So I always kind of take a little bit of a backseat approach when stuff like this happens because we really don't know what happened behind the scenes. And it's the same thing with Deebo Samuel, who's been very vocal about trying to change his role, not thinking that this system will change his role back to what it's supposed to be, and that not getting along with the coach necessarily, and multiple reasons wanting to leave. So it's a little bit different between Kyler and Deebo because Deebo wants out, Kyler just wants money. But in Kyler's defense, everyone else is getting paid. Hopkins already has his money, and he's been injured and suspended. So Kyler's kind of doing everything on his own, if we're being real. And he deserves to get paid like that because
That's where I might push back though, because I think what we've seen from Kyler is a lot of top tier play, a lot of really, really good quarterback play, but there's also the times where he goes 4 games of just kind of mediocre play, and I tend to blame that offense. I think that offense sucks. I think Cliff Kingsbury should not have gotten a contract extension because I don't think he's a good offensive coach, and that's literally all he does. Although their defense has been the better of the two units.
at
I,
times.
right. I would argue though that that could contribute to it. I wonder. I know obviously going and trading for Hollywood Brown, that's a move to try to help Kyler and kind of help ease his mind and know that they are trying to build around him. He wants to be there. I get where he's wanting the money, but like Lamar also deserves much more money and he hasn't gotten his deal yet. And so I
Yeah,
think
but Lamar isn't really negotiating this deal, though. So there's a
right.
difference. And, well, Lamar's just a little bit more pressing. But, for Lamar, this team was reshaping this offseason to full kind of restructure for the future. So him waiting and figuring it out and seeing this last draft class and was a big step. And then they trade away, his favorite target, well, in the receiving core. And,
Mhm.
that takes a big blow. So I think he's just taking the wait and see approach because he doesn't really care. Whereas Kyler, he switched sports and turned down a lot of quick guaranteed money. Now he did get a lot of quick guaranteed money from the NFL as well, but let's be honest, that offensive line isn't good. and games where Hopkins wasn't there, his weapons weren't very good. So Kyler has been running for his life for the last few years, and the defense, while it has been carried by top-heavy stars, clearly in Chandler Jones and Budda Baker, but their drafting of the last few years has been terrible as well, and their usage of Isaiah Simmons has been terrible as well. So I can understand Kyler's frustrations and wanting to secure his money and kind of maybe secure his standing in the room so where he can have a bigger voice in the construction of this team for the future.
Yeah. And I can make an argument that the Cardinals didn't draft well this year either, but they did draft with Kyler in mind. They went offense a little earlier than they traded their first round pick for Hollywood Brown. Good use of that pick, I think. Except I could also argue that
it's a bit of an overpay, but
it's an overpay, but then you also have to pay Hollywood Brown. He is going
which
to
is why it's the overpay. Yeah, like
right.
It without the contract, it's much closer of a deal for sure because they did get, I believe, a third round pick back as well with Hollywood. So it was decent, but yeah, when you have to pay Hollywood, but it's not like Hollywood is going to get this Christian Kirk type money either. He hasn't really been able to do anything, and that's why he wanted out so he could earn a contract. So we'll see what happens. I have faith in Hollywood, and I have faith in Kyler and him working well together again, as they did play together in college. So.
Yeah, and Hollywood had a great 2021, and I think he'll build on that, especially those first 6 games where Hopkins has been suspended, which we haven't even talked about that. So that happened as well. Obviously not as pertinent, but he is appealing the suspension, I believe. So we don't know if
my fucking dynasty teams.
Yeah, I would start to move off of him if I were you, man.
I actually just traded for him in one, but it's a very small league, so it's okay. I just need the star power in the room.
That's fair. That's fair.
He's still an elite talent, and he's still performing that way. He just hasn't been on the field as much, but when he's on the field, he's doing it. I would much rather have him over Odell or Michael Thomas or Al Robinson or Robert Woods. Even it's closer, but still.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. Last piece of news that we'll get to before we get to the NFL schedule, which released last week, and we have not had a chance to talk about that either. So we'll kind of go through, talk some matchups that we like and kind of things that we're looking forward to. But the Browns re-signed Jadeveon Clowney to a 1-year, $11 million deal. He turned down a multi-year contract worth $14 or $15 million. And that there is a rumor floating in Brown's Twitter that it was from the Panthers, and Clowney just absolutely does not want to play with Baker Mayfield. And so he didn't want to go to one of the teams that Baker Mayfield could end up on. I think that's a load of crap. I think Brown's Twitter is just full of shit at this point.
In reality, this is what actual good veterans do, is they take less money to play for an actual playoff contending team instead of a dog water team and the Panthers. There's no question. And that's even if the Panthers were really an actual destination. They don't necessarily even need edge rushers. So, no, they don't. It could all just be bullshit smoke. So,
yeah. And then lastly, I did say that was the last piece of news, but I forgot I added that the Browns are willing to eat some of Baker Mayfield's salary in order to make it. Yeah, I would say if I had to put a number on it, he's making $18 million. I'll bet they'll be willing to eat like 12, something around that.
Yeah, I would go like 60 to 75% is what they're thinking right now. And there's multiple teams, Panthers included, Seahawks, even Texans. There's other teams as well that it is a 1-year deal for Baker, but at this point you're getting him at a good value, and it's upside, especially for a team like Seattle. Why not? You could still give the whole reins to Drew Lock and just have it be a competition. You're already doing that with Geno Smith, but doing this, you have the ability to now trade Geno for a decent pick next year, and you basically just recoup your whole. You keep recouping assets for the next year, as you might need to trade up because we'll see what the quarterback situation is there. And then Carolina, you just need as many shots to the dartboard for those guys to keep their fucking job.
Yeah. I mean, it's to put Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield in a quarterback competition would surely be something. That would
Well, I would
both
say
top three
one's done something.
Yeah,
You
Baker
know,
Mayfield is a far superior quarterback to Sam Darnold, and we loved Sam Darnold. I didn't think that as when they were prospects. That's for sure. Sam Darnold was QB 1 or 2. I think 1 for me. But all right, let's talk through some of the NFL schedule. What's
quickly,
up?
I will say we are not predicting the schedule right now. That will be a later date episode, definitely later of like July or August, just when we get a little bit more of a full breakdown of how this is going to shake out. But yeah, just so you know, we're not necessarily going to be picking anyone. We may, but it's not official.
And that process looks a little different for us this year. We'll talk about projections and stuff in the future and what the future of that looks like for us. But let's just jump right into it. So week 1, the Bills open up at the Rams on Thursday night. So what could have been a fantastic Super Bowl matchup, now we get as the opener this year. I think that's going to be a good game. But the week 1 matchup that I am stoked for is the Monday Night Football game. Denver going to Seattle. Russell Wilson's return to Seattle. They made it week 1. That is going to be nuts. Seattle obviously should honor him and not, but he also kind of forced his way out over the course of the last 2.5 years, which fair enough. I also think I would have considered that. But is that kind of the matchup you're looking at? I know Bucks and Cowboys
No,
play again.
no.
Okay.
It's on the list mainly because of that factor. You know, it's the return of Russ. We'll see how it all plays out with the 12th man. When this trade happened, I kind of went over listening to different Seahawks, like podcasts and different fans on Twitter. For the most part, they seemingly understand and agree with what Russell had to do to just kind of get out of this little bit of a sinking ship and a rebuilding ship. And at his age, going to an actual contender makes more sense. Kind of like the Lions just did. You know, it's a little bit more of a respect move on the Lions' part than I think it was necessarily on Seattle's part. But maybe we'll get that respect part on Monday Night Football. I hope we do, because Denver is probably going to win by 60. That's why it's not my favorite matchup. If it's not Bills and Rams, because that's obviously going to be an absolute fucking slugfest. Let's be real. I would go with, maybe there's a little bit of a bias here, but Raiders versus Chargers games last year were an absolute fucking shootout. I think that'll happen again. There's a lot of rivalry games week 1, which is incredible. Packers, Vikings, Pats, Dolphins, Steelers, Bengals. I mean, we got divisional matchups week 1, and then we have possible Super Bowl matchups from last year or this year, and a homecoming to boot. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. If Kenny Pickett wins the job, the Bengals are going to eat him alive in week 1.
Yep. A little bit of old guard versus the new dogs. And, the Bengals should roll there pretty easily. Their secondary has improved, but not like this exuberant amount, especially early on. So if Pickett or Trubisky can actually just maintain and make some good throws, it should be a very, very good game.
Yeah. All right, we're not going to go week to week because that would take far too long, but I do want to mention the matchup. Week 2 Thursday Night Football is Chargers versus Chiefs. Those two matchups are going to be 2 of the best games in all of the entire season. I mean, all of the AFC West matchups are going to be that.
That's what I was literally about to say. I was like, pretty much, if the AFC West is playing, that's what we're watching.
Yeah, and what's really going to happen is they're going to eat each other alive.
Every division kind of does that, though.
They do. I think it's going to be a little bit more so there. What are the odds that they all go 2-2, 3-3 against their division mates?
Better than
How
50%, which is hilarious.
Isn't it?
Seems like that's 50%. Just because, and all 4 are good teams now, and
like
all
really
4
good teams,
legitimate playoff teams. I would only give the Super Bowl contending team to the Chiefs only because they've been there. But these 3 are right out of the tail. It's going to be hard pressed for teams like the Browns and the Bengals and Ravens and Patriots and Dolphins going up against the Bills. All these teams that are going to be fighting for those last 3 playoff spots. when we might get 2 or 3 of this one division in.
Yeah.
And I'd almost be shocked if we didn't.
Yeah, realistically, I think the AFC East and South are going to get shut out. I think
I mean,
it's going to
South,
be
it's Titans or Colts, and then we don't care. And then
yeah, yeah,
East is still a fight though. I mean, Jets are up
it
and
is.
coming, but they're not gonna get it done this year for sure. But with the moves that have been made, I don't know, man. It's gonna be a fun season.
I know you're a Patriots fan. I
Well,
think there kind of. I think there's a really good chance that the Patriots finish last in their division this year. I really do.
I do not, but
I know. But that's got to be just putting faith in Bill to win games, which he does, and we know that he
he
won with Cam Newton, and
what exactly? He's what are the last 2 years, if not just faith in Bill? I mean,
yeah,
they almost made the playoffs with the dog shit offense with Cam. Then they did make a playoffs with Mac, and an
yeah.
aging defense. Now, is it completely revamped? No, but we'll see. I mean, I don't expect them to be 11-win football team, but
No,
still.
no. Definitely not. And then the last one I really wanted to highlight, and maybe if you want to highlight one more, we can do that. But week 6, the Bills versus the Chiefs, the matchup of the overtime game that was stolen from the Bills, and that rule sucks. And did they fix that? I feel like they officially fixed that for this year, didn't they?
Yeah,
Just for the playoffs, though.
just for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um,
So that matchup's going to be stupid, and we'll talk about our dynasty quarterbacks in a second. Why we think that matchup's going to be absolutely stupid. But I probably need a countdown app for week 6. That's for sure.
yeah, I mean, that one for sure. I think week 4, Chiefs versus Bucks. That's never as long as Tom's there. That's always going to be a great game. Week 5, Chargers versus Browns. When that just happened, that was one of the most electric games of the season. I think that could go really well. Packers Bills is kind of a Super Bowl matchup possibility. I think in week 8, that's an amazing game. Uh, I'm just scrolling through quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because there's some games that I would like to see, but that doesn't mean everyone would want to see it.
Week
Chiefs versus
15.
Bengals. Chiefs versus
Uh,
Bengals in week 13. Rematch there as well. Basically, we're just going against rematches here. We've
yeah,
already talked about AFC West teams, so anytime they play each other, that's going to be huge. You had one
yeah.
for week 15.
Yeah, I was going to say Rams Packers. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the Packers are they're inevitably winning at least 12 games. I mean, that's
I would
what the
say at
Packers.
least 10.
I, that's
I,
probably
I, I'm
fair.
just, in a more conservative approach of it. I would say at least 10 because I do have some faith in Justin Fields and the Vikings team in general. And honestly, the Lions a sneak one. So like, I do think it's less of a cupcake division than it was last year. So that's why I press back on it. But I would
That's fair.
happily meet in the middle of 11. So
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
and ultimately there are questions around the Packers.
yeah,
They invested in wide receiver, but they also lost the best wide receiver in football. So they're not going to replace that with Christian Watson. So, but
yeah.
yeah, I think that'll be a good game. Any
Uh,
others?
s- Speaking of the best wide receiver in football, Week 14, Raiders versus Rams on Thursday Night Football. Seeing Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey, what we are robbed of the next week because of the trade. We get it a week early and on Thursday night. It should be really good. Um, I was also going to highlight Thanksgiving, Bills, Lions, Giants versus Cowboys, Pats versus Vikings. I would probably say Pats versus Vikings would be the best game there, but you never know with the Lions on Thanksgiving. Christmas week, it's not the greatest games, I would say, but there are some like bigger rivalry ones. Eagles, Cowboys, Raiders versus Steelers is a throwback rivalry, so we'll see how that goes. The biggest one, obviously, that week is going to be Broncos versus Rams, which is actually on Christmas.
Mhm.
So that's going to be electric, but we're going to be kind of spoiled on the holidays. It seems like even Thanksgiving, I think those are better games than we've gotten a lot of the years, and maybe that's just improvement on teams or belief in improvement on teams like the Lions.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was
And
also going to
then
mention, so all the games Christmas week are going to be on Christmas because Christmas is on a Sunday this year. So we get a full slate of
yes,
games for
yes. So
Christmas Day this year.
Christmas Eve is Saints versus Browns, Bills versus Bears, and Bengals versus Patriots, Eagles versus Cowboys, and Raiders versus Steelers. And then Christmas is Packers versus Dolphins, Broncos versus Rams, Buccaneers versus Cardinals, and Chargers versus Colts is actually on Monday Night Football. So that is an absolutely insane holiday weekend, and
Yeah.
that's going to be one of the more favorite ones for me to be watching. I'm hoping to be back home for that. We'll see with all that, vacation
Hmm.
days or whatever it is. But we'll
You'll
see with
get
all
you'll
that.
get Christmas off. It's on a Sunday, so
I
congrats.
do work for a school system, so
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And then it's a good reminder. So the flex games, I believe, start in week 15 now. They used to be 14. Now they're
yes.
15. Then week 18, all games are still to be determined. So you might
Yeah.
see some flex things in and out and things like that. So,
And they're for majority, I think they're pretty much all just divisional matchups. So
yes.
any big ones you could think of, yeah, even Chiefs versus Raiders, Chargers, Broncos might be the absolute shootout of the division. And the last week, and Browns get Steelers, Ravens gets Bengals. So
Same thing
kind
as
of the
last
same
year.
as last year. Hopeful, pray. Well, no, it's different. Yeah, we had Bengals
Oh,
last year, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
See, so this I don't like this setup where they put a divisional game in week 18 because they're robbing us of a really good divisional game if a team is already clinched playoff berth. And like last year, the Bengals sat Joe Burrow and then Baker Mayfield sat, and it was a crappy football game. So what they've done by adding that extra game and then tossing all the divisional games in there because it's probably easier for them to make the schedule is ruin our last week of football before the playoffs. But
not really though. I mean, Burrow sat, but if you remember correctly from last year, most players ended up playing because there was a lot of seeding games because we were very, very close between a lot of teams. So at least for the
yeah,
first half, we got a lot of everything. There wasn't a lot of like complete dud games, and the only ones we're going to really get from those are going to be like AFC South, stuff like that where maybe the Titans are facing the Jaguars and we just don't give a shit, like,
yeah,
uh, and the Colts are facing the Texans, it's stuff like that where obviously last year that game actually mattered, but I don't think we're going to have a lot of those because most of these divisions have become very, very, very fucking competitive.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Anything else you wanted to mention on the NFL schedule before we get into our dynasty quarterback rankings?
I am not looking forward to predicting the schedule. I have a feeling that there's going to be so many teams with the same record that I'm going to then have to go through tiebreaker scenarios, and wanna do stuff. We're not going to say things,
Yeah,
but not be a happy camper.
yeah, yeah. That'll. I will say last year my bold prediction was that the Lions would win. I think 6 games is what I said.
Some people
Um,
crazy.
and I think I was a year off. I think that's what I would have them at this year. So
I'm not against it necessarily this year. I believe I had the Bengals with like 8 wins last year, and I thought
yeah,
I was crazy. So
yeah.
clearly I wasn't, and
I
I
had
was
them with
still
like
way off.
5.
They still went way past that. So
Yeah,
um, we'll see. We'll see.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
especially the AFC doing the tiebreakers is it's going to be
It's
painstaking for sure.
yeah. It's not gonna be
Thankfully,
fun.
there's websites for that now.
Yeah, for sure. All right. That'll do it for NFL news. And it is time to get into our dynasty quarterback rankings. So, as I said before, we put together a consensus with Adam and Sean and guys that have contributed to all of our rankings and our weekly rankings and things like that in the past. So, we actually have a pretty decently built out consensus, not as heavily swayed as if it was just Randy and I doing it, because then it's just splitting the rankings in half and then going from there. So, without further ado, let's get
Yeah.
into our QB ones. So, 1 through 12. Everything is a 12-person league. Really quickly, though, Randy, before we toss the graphic up, when you're playing Dynasty, how long are you looking forward? What is your year Like, is it 2 years? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? If it's 1 year, I question you.
Um,
I
I
know
think
you're someone who likes to win, though. So
yes, I do like to win. I did win 3 leagues
wow,
last year, and it's not enough.
correct.
I'm a greedy fucker. For
Yeah.
me, I think it varies by position for Dynasty, and I don't, I think I'm good at Dynasty, but I by no means think I'm an absolute like expert at it. We're still in the space necessarily relatively new, but we were, kind of hopping on right before it became uber popular. So
Mhm.
for like quarterbacks, I think I can work in more of like a 5 to 6 year window, especially with non like rookie guys. Like once we're in year 2 or 3, we get like a more of a understanding. So these top guys we're going to mention, they're all young and have these cores already built, and you know who's going to be there. And yeah, maybe there's going to be some major shakeup, but it's not going to put them like 30 down the list or something. If they get injured or something major happens off the field, like we can't control that anyway. So for quarterbacks, I'd say like 4 to 6 year windows. Running backs definitely like 2 to 3 at most. Wide receivers, I'd say about 4 or 5 years as well. Again, once you're off of that preliminary, first period of when they get into the league. I think you got to go a little bit less on those guys. Tight ends, 1 to 2 years. Like I think you have to look at it each year as a different situation, especially with how the wide receivers been moving about. Uh, so like the guys like Kelsey and Kittle and Pitts, like they're and Andrews, even Hopkins, and to an extent, they're all going to be stalwarts. Those guys you can kind of lock in, I guess Waller too. But when you're past those top like 6, that's when I think of it's more of a 1 to 2 year, because is Dawson Knox going to repeat? Is Schultz going to repeat? Even though there was some mix up in the targets now, is Irv Smith actually going to meet the potential he's supposed to? So we'll get into all those later in different shows here, but those are kind of the breakdowns I normally do for positions.
Yeah.
But in general, it's kind of by team as well. What am I trying to do?
Yeah, I've kind of taken a different approach recently in recent startups. So I definitely look for quarterbacks. I look at a contract. So pretty much a 4 to 5 year window. If you're looking
Yep.
at a rookie contract, that's kind of what I'm looking at for quarterbacks always. It's a little more difficult, and that's why it's like difficult to rank some guys that were drafted day 2. Your Jalen Hurts, for example. In Dynasty, last year, everyone was saying he's a better redraft quarterback than Dynasty. Turns out that might not be the case based on the moves that the Eagles have made, but it still could be. It still could be because they
Exactly.
have
We
capital
we
for
need
next year.
we need another year
Exactly.
to finalize for Hurts, and that might not even do it because they may tag him instead of extending them, and so there's a lot of question marks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think he ever got out of his preliminary phase yet. No one
Right.
really fully believes in Hurts yet. Even if you actually do believe in him in fantasy necessarily, I don't think we're all sold on him in the actual game. And that's what matters. Well, not that he
Getting
doesn't have
there.
talent, not that he doesn't have talent, not that he's not improving, because he definitely fucking is. It's just he's not secure yet. And
Right.
until he is, he'll never get to the next level. I mean, we thought Baker was secure.
Yep.
Was he at the top level? No, but we thought he was secure at least.
Right.
uh, you know,
And that's something that, you can't. I guess we could have seen that Baker stuff coming. We didn't think that that was going to be the case based on his 2020, but injuries and stuff like that can impact it a lot. Where I've switched my my line of thinking though is I do look longer term for running backs, and I have since bumped younger running backs up a little higher in my rankings. I've kind of, I know
that
I am not so much an ageist where I will
I was gonna
put
say, like,
26, 27, I still value that because I'm still trying to win. The point of fantasy football is to win your leagues. And I think that some people playing Dynasty sometimes forget that. And they want to do 2 and 3 year rebuilds. But if you can't retool and rebuild your roster in a year, I don't think that you have a very good team. Just plain and simple. I think you need to be looking at how can I flip this for next year? Because I'm wasting money spending on league fees every year. I'm just giving people money, and I don't want to be doing that personally. So.
Oh no, trust me, I'm definitely tired of not winning in CLE. Hence
Yeah.
the 3 first-round picks next year, and
Yep. Yep. Yep.
it
Same.
is. I am done with that. So yeah, I mean, like you basically said you're in a long term with running backs, but you also moved up the young ones, which is usually what the short term people do as well. So I
That's fair.
think you're doing both, and which is perfectly fine. I think that's exactly what you should do for running backs, and that is why it's like 1 to 2, 2 to 3 years. And I think those are separate things, but you should use them together. Obviously, I think Fournette is like a 1 to 2 year guy, and James Conner same thing. But obviously, Jonathan Taylor, Najee, and all them, you do 2 to 3, and then you reevaluate because I mean is Kamara and Cook as high as they were? Is CMC as high as they were 2 to 3 years ago? No. Are they still the top running backs? Yeah. Have other people eclipsed them? Yeah. But they're still the top guys. 2 to 3 years ago, you wouldn't have sold Barkley. Now you don't want to sell him because you're maybe only getting a back end first. That's why the window is shorter for that position because the lifespan's shorter.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Let's talk through some of the quarterbacks. So let's toss the graphic up here. So 1 through 12. Number 1, Josh Allen. 2, Patrick Mahomes. QB3, Justin Herbert. QB4, Lamar Jackson. 5, Joe Burrow. 6, Kyler Murray. 7, Deshaun Watson. 8, Dak Prescott. 9, Aaron Rodgers. 10, Russell Wilson. 11, Matthew Stafford. And 12, Jalen Hurts. With respect to ECR and other consensus rankings, our first 8 are directly in line with consensus. So we don't have too many differing opinions here as a group. But I did want to mention in this group, because of that, I actually have Justin Herbert as my QB2. And so I feel as though I should justify that. So I think the ceiling for Herbert is right where Patrick Mahomes is. And I think Patrick Mahomes, while he has been fantastic, we have a little bit more of a situational ambiguity, if that makes sense. So you've got an aging Travis Kelce, you've got Tyreek Hill out the door, you've got an influx of receivers, and the rumor is that means that the offense is going to look different because, of course, it is. You can't just throw it to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce anymore. You just can't do it. So, with the stability in the Chargers' weaponry and kind of what that looks like moving forward, now I know Keenan Allen's getting up there, but I think they do have a little more stability with Eckler and the running back situation and everything that's going on for the Chargers. I think that Herbert could eclipse Mahomes by next year, and I am always trying to rank, a year before everyone else is. I'm trying to beat consensus, and so I did want to mention that. And then our consensus is still Patrick Mahomes QB2 because I think everyone else has it there. So,
yeah, I mean the top 8 are pretty much locked in. Obviously, people didn't see Watson last year. He was top 5. Going into the year, we thought he would play. And honestly, this is a lot of emergence from Burrow, who was probably roughly like 9 to 13, 14 last year. He's up to 5 now after this Super Bowl run and then bringing in Jamar Chase and this being a really young core around him. Kind of the same thing as Herbert last year. It's the young core around him and the talent around him. It's all working out. But Kyler and Deshaun dropping down. Kyler for obviously basically all with some situations, those two. Watson, I think, should be top 5, but with the pending stuff as well and going into a new system, I think you have to fairly drop him a little bit. And we've seen this system kind of, while it might increase touchdowns for quarterbacks, it usually decreases yards. And Deshaun Watson, the last time he played, was like a 5,000-yard quarterback. I don't think we see that from the Browns this year. I do think he eclipses 4,000, but we have to adjust and see where it ends up. I'm not sure how much he runs, and we'll see. So that's why he's a little bit lower. Dak is just where he's going to be because for him, he keeps producing, the team keeps changing. he bounced back from the injury. He played really well, but he's also an up and down guy as well. So is the entire Cowboys team, if we're being honest. So the top 8, well, I think it's right to be alongside consensus. I do think we get all the young guns out of the way, the stable young guns. And then we get the stalwarts in here. We get the Rodgers, the Wilson, the Stafford, the guys that have been carrying people's teams for the last few years and possibly got them a title last year. And the QB 1 or 2 on the team that they are absolutely in love of. I've been trying to get Aaron Rodgers in certain leagues for 3 years now. It's impossible. Even this year with the situation completely changed, and you can't do it. Same with Stafford and Wilson. It's just terrible. Once these guys moved, no one wanted to move them for a good reason. And while they are much older than everyone else here, and to some extent for like Rodgers, it feels like you can add 2 of them and it's the same age. It's ridiculous, which is obviously not true, but it feels like it at this point. These guys are winning you titles. These guys can be your quarterback 1s in a startup and win you titles. And I would be absolutely ecstatic if I could do a startup right now and have 2 of those 3 as my top 2 quarterbacks moving forward. And then, you're looking down the line in 4 years that you have to knock down somebody. Who cares? Trade your first after the startup for someone you think sucks. First next year. Give them your third too. I don't care. If you can get CJ Stroud because of it, you've just won for the next decade. So
I mean, so really quickly, I did want to jump back to the Burrow versus Kyler.
Okay.
So to me, my 5, I am low on Kyler, and I still have him ahead of Burrow. I have Burrow sitting at QB 9 right now in my rankings. I think that Kyler's rushing ability, it just will automatically put him above Burrow. Now, I think you can make an argument that with Burrow's weapons, and I just talked about the stability of Justin Herbert's and why I have him ranked higher. I think to me that puts Burrow up a little higher because I think with Burrow, you're looking at a volume-based thing, and if 1 or 2 of his weapons go down or his offensive line doesn't play well and he still keeps taking a bazillion sacks a year, I think he could be a little more volatile than even Kyler Murray, who I just talked about as a volatile piece in terms of his NFL quarterbacking. But the thing is, it didn't matter because for fantasy, he's using his little legs and he's running a little bit. So
for me, the major difference, and I have Burrow at 4. The major difference is Burrow's team consistently is getting better each year. Kyler's isn't. Did they massively improve when they got Hopkins? Yes. Do we think their selections this year really improved? I think bringing in Hollywood Brown and
Trey McBride,
and bringing back Ertz is good for this team for now and for the future. But I still think the Bengals have done more to help Burrow's future. I do think Burrow's also older. If not the same age. So I think he's just a little bit more ahead right now as a complete quarterback. He's consistently dropping 400 yards game after game and multiple touchdowns thanks to his elite talent at wide receiver and a good pass catching running back as well. So I have him slightly ahead. I actually have Kyler at 7. I have Lamar and Deshaun ahead of him just for more consistent play when they've played on the field. For some of those guys. And actually, I think me and you probably surprisingly don't see Fields on this top 12 list because I'm sure both of us have him in the top 12 and he did not make it. So
firmly in my top 12.
I have him at 10, Fields, just for, safekeeping. I actually have Jalen Hurts at 15, mainly because of what we already talked about. He's not stable as of yet in his contract situation in the future. Is a little bit more fluid, whereas Fields is not stable as of yet in his team. He is stable, at least for the immediate future. And even if worst case scenario, he demands out of Chicago, I think we all, besides Bears fans, might even rejoice. But I do think they can turn it around there and get some more weapons around him. But so we have the stalwarts there and then Hurts at 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so with regard to Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford specifically, we're 6 spots higher on Aaron Rodgers and we are 3 spots higher on Matthew Stafford. So we do value, if I'm looking at my winning window, I said for like quarterbacks, how I rank them, it's 4 to 5 years is kind of what I'm looking at. But I'm looking at a winning window of 2 to 3 years. Do I think that I'm going to
Yeah.
get 2 to 3 years out of Aaron Rodgers right now? Hell yeah, I do. I even built that
Mhm.
in two, I think two is I can confidently say I'm getting 2 years out of Aaron Rodgers with elite play still because he has shown that he just won back-to-back MVPs. I don't think his play is slowing down at any time in the next few years. The Rodgers situation reminds me very much so of what we did with Brady when he had that one down year in New England and then he bounced back and has never looked back. He's been a QB1 every freaking year since. I
Yep.
think that we're going to be looking at that same situation, except Rodgers started, 5 years before, and he had his bad year 2 years ago where he was QB 19 down the stretch, and then he's never looked back. And so I actually have him ranked QB 11, despite being 38 years old and by far the oldest quarterback I have in my top 20 by a lot. So,
Yeah, I have him at 12. I think those three, as long as they're playing, I think they're pretty much locked in to be in this 8 to like 14 range for your quarterbacks. Just because they play at elite teams, they are the elite quarterbacks, and they are absolutely killing it. Yes, they are older, but older does not mean dead. I mean, even was the last guy to leave. Even Breeze was still a relevant quarterback every week when he played. Even the
yeah.
guys that are so old that they shouldn't be on the field are still dominating. So to act like these top end Hall of Fame talents would not also be that way, even though they continually show us that, it'd be a detriment to your future of your team.
Yeah. So what I would say is I'm glad that we have Aaron Rodgers in our top 12 because we are on the right side of history, I would guess. And then, like you said, so let's get into 13 through 24. So these are going to be our QB2s, guys that, just below the tier. And obviously we feel different ways than some of our consensus even. But 13, Justin Fields, 14, Derek Carr, 15, Trey Lance, 16, Trevor Lawrence, 17, Zach Wilson, 18, Tua Tagovailoa, 19 Tom Brady, 20 Kirk Cousins, 21 Mac Jones, 22 Ryan Tannehill, 23 Davis Mills, and 24 Carson Wentz. The main thing that I take from this is that there are 6 quarterbacks from the 2021 NFL draft class that fall inside our QB2 range. Justin Fields, I didn't say where I have him. I have him up at QB6. I think that he's going to be a fantasy superstar. I think Trey Lance is right there behind him. I have Trey Lance at QB10 personally, but obviously that's why we do consensus. They even out my shitty takes and my craziness. But what are your thoughts looking at this list, Randy?
I think it's appropriate. We have, like you said, this enormous influx of young quarterback talent that we've seen in the last couple of years. Obviously, there's some that has already elevated to the next level that we just saw on the last list, but Fields has the talent to get there and the weapons necessarily, pretty much two of them, and a good running back. Lawrence, I think, has the chance to get there this year. We just got to see some more development. We saw a lot of bad habits from him last year, just because of that whole situation. I do not blame Trevor Lawrence in the slightest for that. Trey Lance, we haven't seen enough, but there's still so much hype with the running game with him that he's stuck up here. Wilson, he's got to prove it. Same with Tua this year. They gave him all the weapons, but we have, again, another batch of these old guns. Derek Carr last year, probably people would have him at like 20. He rightfully would be around like 15, 16, and this year he's up to 14 with the influx of possibly the best receiver in football and Devontae Adams. He's got all the weapons he's ever could have asked for. Uh, and the line is still not great. Let's not mix that up. But Carr has done better with, worse, I would say. And now he's got better weapons. And Adams, basically every target he has does an exceptional job as well of getting open quickly when needed to. So I do not see a lot of a lot of issues there as long as there isn't that extra step of hesitancy from Carr, which you've seen over the past. So as long as he continues to do that, I think he deserves to be there. And then like Brady, yeah, is he probably gonna be QB1 this year? Fucking probably. Um,
Yeah.
but he's so old, and this is, I would say, pretty much guaranteed as last year. Um, he didn't want to do the farewell tour, but then his mind and body said, "What are you doing?" So he's back out here. I would say it's an absolute dead stop max of 2 years for Brady, so he is rightfully down here in the middle back end of the QB2s, just because while we do think he's probably a QB1 or just under it this year, you can't guarantee he's there next year. So it's a little bit of a 1 year rental. That's why not a lot of teams are going to be trading for or trading away Brady when you're looking at your leagues, because at this point you've been gifted another year, Brady, and you're just full sending it. Cousins, he's extended for 2 years, so this is rightfully where he is, and he's going to be finishing closer to QB1 than this, but he's also older and on less stable ground. Tannehill has been good. Tannehill and Wentz have been good in the past, but are on incredibly shaky ground with rookie quarterbacks that could win the job, not necessarily this year, but in the future. And then Mac Jones and Davis Mills, while they did play well last year at times, I obviously think Mac Jones is a little bit more set in his position than Davis Mills. But when you're talking to or listening from people from the Texans, that is not the case. They absolutely love old long neck, and we loved him coming out. Maybe not even to this extent. Like I don't think we necessarily thought he would even get this successful, at least this early on. But we thought this would maybe be more of his ceiling, like down the road. But he's hit the ground running, and can he keep the job? Probably not. Only for the fact that this is probably a bad team, and if I'm the Texans and I'm sitting there, and it's, do I want C.J. Stroud or Davis Mills? Or do I want Will Anderson? Like, that's literally the question you have to ask then. And that's if they're one. They might not be one. Davis Mills could do enough that they're not one. So I think he's earned his spot as a QB2 here, just from that simple regard of the team believes in him.
Yes. Yeah, I was shocked to see Davis Mills fall that high. I think, I have him as my QB22. I do think, and
Yeah.
I consume a lot of football content, and I try to listen to beat reporters a lot. And like you said, the Texans believe in this kid. And while I couldn't have projected this even, it was a kid that we loved. And
Yeah.
the tools were there, the accuracy and the ball placement was there. And then we saw it when he was a rookie, when he was never expected to play. And that is kind of, you look at someone like Kirk Cousins and you say, can Davis Mills have that career right there? And I say, absolutely. I actually think Davis Mills has equal or better arm talent than Kirk Cousins. And so I do think that question that you asked, CJ Stroud or Will Anderson, I think the Texans are a team that would say, yeah, we're going to take Will Anderson and we're going to keep rolling with Davis Mills. So
it's
that's why.
possible, but there could be more turnover from that team again next year. And then if you're also the number one pick with Davis Mills under center, it kind of then breeds more questions. So honestly, when we do our actual record prediction, maybe this could be, maybe we will even adjust rankings, probably not. But maybe that plays into our thinking then of maybe the stable ground or the future for some of these quarterbacks. I would say Davis Mills has a more stable ground than,
Tannehill even?
Tannehill and Wentz for sure. Winston.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones for sure. Goff for sure. It's close enough to right now Trey Lance and Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
It's close enough, but they have much better teams is the problem for him.
I still believe that the Texans, if Davis Mills is legit, they're going to win some games. That's the bottom line. And like you said, if they're bad enough to get the number one overall pick, they'll probably take a quarterback. But it's worth noting that Davis Mills could go out and have a QB1 season this year. I think that is within his range of outcomes. He's got some weapons, man. He's
Garbage
got
time.
Mechie. Right.
Garbage time, man.
Well, and so Cooks and Mechie are going to be getting open. Mechie obviously is not going to play right away, I don't think, with his knee injury. But then you've also got Nico Collins. You've got Brevin Jordan, who had a late season surge. I think that
Thankfully.
you're right.
Silly.
I know. But yeah, I think that there is a world where he does finish that way. I would not project it that way. I did want to mention too, I find it interesting that Tua gets a bump in weapons, and I say I find it interesting, and I have it ranked this way. I have Trey Lance, then Zach Wilson, then Trevor Lawrence, then Tua, not in exact order. I have Trey Lance QB 10, I have Zach Wilson QB 13, I have Trevor Lawrence QB 17, and I have Tua QB 18. So I have it ranked this way, but I do find it interesting that Tua gets a bump, a better coaching staff. He gets a better offense. He gets Tyreek Hill. He gets a healthy Jalen Waddle all year.
Does he have a better coaching staff?
I think so. I mean, in terms of
who's their head coach? Mike McDaniels? Would I rather have from the 49ers? Would I rather have Robert Saleh or Mike McDaniels?
No. Not. I mean, Tua has a better coaching staff from what he just had. Brian Flores did not believe in him.
Brian Flores, I think, is a better coach, but yeah, he didn't believe.
I agree. He's a much better coach, but the belief system is important, especially for young kids like Tua. And then we would put the sophomore quarterbacks over the third-year quarterback in Tua based on, I think, what we've seen. And this is more like what's in the box could be a boat type of deal with Wilson and Lawrence and Lance to some extent, I guess.
Definitely Lance.
Yeah.
The difference for me, and I do have it, Lance, Lawrence, Wilson, Tua, literally 4 in a row. Lance, it's a little bit of what's in the box. We just got to see it. And what we've seen from Trey Lance, while reports from OTAs and stuff and voluntary workouts is definitely different, what we've seen actually on the field during the season is every time he stepped on the field, he's gotten better. And that's the type of players I will always get behind in fantasy because, I mean, that's what stars do. They work hard, they get better every time they step on the field. Lawrence is the most talented of that section, but possibly in the worst situation. So he has to stay lower. Why I have Wilson ahead of Tua, why I have all of them ahead of Tua. I love Tua. He's the only one that's been injured. He's the only one. He's on the shortest leash as well.
Wilson missed, I think, 3 games last year, but still, I mean, it's not.
He's the only one that's had a major injury.
Yeah.
I'll rephrase. Listen here, Johnny Depp's lawyers. But Tua's had a major injury, and he's on a short leash, and we already see the fan base rejecting Tua from this team makeup. But I think this is exactly what they want from Tua, is to be quick and efficient and electric, and then hit the deep ball, which we know Tua can hit. He's not fucking trying in a bucket hat and shirts. He's not trying to throw it 70 yards, guys.
Well, not only that, we've talked about that.
Hill doesn't want to run 70 yards, fuckers.
Right.
It's
not
practice.
Only that. Well, and that's the thing. It's practice. He's never played with Tyreek Hill. Do you know how hard it is to try to match up your deep ball timing with a guy that fast? It's impossible to do it on the first day. Like, I know they've been working before, but like, it's going to take some time. Chemistry takes time. It's crazy.
It's hard to time a slant perfectly with somebody you've worked with all the time.
Look at Baker and Odell. I mean, they could never get it. They could never get the timing right. But
no,
all right,
he could not.
I had one more note here. So we talked about Lance and how it's what's in the box type of deal. For fantasy, it's not though. If he steps on the field, he's a fantasy QB1 just based on the rushing alone, assuming that they use him in the way that they could. Trey Lance, he started 2 games last year, I believe, and he was a QB1 in both of those weeks. So it's important to note that. But the ranking here does build in the fact that maybe he's not a really good quarterback in the NFL. We believe he will be, but
Hurts hasn't been a good actual quarterback, really. No. Not consistently, but he's gotten it done on the ground, and he's a quarterback 1. Fields, without running a ton, was a quarterback 1 a lot of weeks last year when he played. That's why Fields is higher,
Yeah,
because we've
for sure.
seen it and we know we can still run. All we've seen from the other two is really running, so that's why they're a little bit lower for me. I mean, I do have Hurts ahead of Fields, I believe. No, I don't. No, I don't. I have Hurts below Fields. So,
Which is
um,
correct.
yeah.
Justin Fields over Jalen Hurts in Dynasty. Come on.
We are higher on Derek Carr. We are much lower than consensus on Lance and Lawrence. We are higher on Brady, and we're higher on Wentz than consensus by considerable margin as well, which is kind of hilarious because he's the actual fucking starter, and he
Yeah.
had a couple quarterback 1 weeks last year.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not because of me. I am outside my top 32, so
Oof.
I'm a big hater. All right, let's get to 25 through 36 really quickly before we get out of here. We'll just run through these and just quick notes. 25, Matt Ryan. 26, Jameis Winston. 27, Kenny Pickett. We'll talk about that. 28, Baker Mayfield. 29, Jimmy Garoppolo. 30, Jared Goff. 31, Daniel Jones. 32, Desmond Ritter. 33, Drew Lock. 34, Malik Willis. 35, Mitch Trubisky. 36, Sam Darnold. The ones, especially that we are lower or higher on, Kenny Pickett, we are 5 spots lower than consensus. That's just a lack of belief in the talent. And you'll notice that we are also higher on Trubisky, even if it's only by 1 spot. I believe that Trubisky is going to go out and win that job. Yeah, at least for the first few weeks of the season, because I think he's the better quarterback by a small margin, I guess. I guess I'll say a small margin, but
Yeah. I think they're very close right now. But that's part of why we're lower on Pickett. We don't know if he is going to win it this year. We're higher on the trade bait guys and Baker and Jimmy G, just because both have significant upside once they're moved. But
yes.
because they're in the holding pattern, I understand why they're lower.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just moving on. So Daniel Jones, we're a couple spots lower, but consensus is really low on Daniel Jones. He doesn't have really any stability, and this is kind of, Daniel Jones hasn't even shown what Baker had, and we saw what just happened to Baker. And the 2023 quarterback class has a couple of studs, and maybe a couple more than a couple. So,
Yeah.
so I don't think the Giants will be moving forward with Daniel Jones. Could be wrong, but that's why I ranked him down even lower than this, I believe. And then I did want to mention we are 8 spots lower than consensus on Malik Willis. Malik Willis should not be in your top 32 quarterbacks. He was drafted in the 3rd round. And while he does have fantasy upside, and I'm kind of, I have Desmond Ritter inside my top 32, but the reason for that is Tannehill versus Mariota. We've already done that. We've already done that dance, and Tannehill won that dance. I think Ritter can win that job from Mariota, and then we'll see him have value for a year, whereas Malik Willis cannot beat out Ryan Tannehill. It's just not. He's
No,
not good enough right
he
now.
can just beat out Ryan Tannehill's money. That's
In year
that's his
2,
path.
even.
Yeah,
Right.
that's his path to the field is being the cheap option.
Yeah. And
Because he's not ready. We were verbatim on that through the draft process. While there is talent and there is upside, we will never deny that from Malik Willis. He is not ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he kills it in these trainings and everything, and he gets there. I will definitely not count that out because he seems to be one of the harder workers as well. So we'll see what happens. But this is a guy that's not going to touch the field this year, in my opinion. So to have him over guys that are at least guaranteed to compete for the spot, I think is a little bit silly.
it's silly is a word for it. I just, if you're getting advice that Malik Willis is almost a back end QB2, I'm sorry. I think you got to get some different advice. Maybe
A little bit.
I feel like that's not a good process, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Malik Willis is a star, and for fantasy, if he does get that opportunity, he will be. He will be a
He'll be
back
a
end
quarterback
1.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back end 1, high 2, just from rushing alone because he is a dynamic ball carrier.
Yeah.
I think
But
that's why.
I mean, I think Hurts is more advanced as a passer coming out. And that says a lot because Hurts
Yeah,
has worked very hard to get to the point where he's at now, and he's still
and
not
yeah,
necessarily, to an NFL top quarterback competent. obviously he's much better than I would ever be, so respect there. But
Right.
like compared to Brady and all these guys, he's nowhere near, even on the table.
Yeah.
At least yet. But he's again another guy who keeps getting better. So if Willis can continue this trajectory, I think he can, get to the QB2 discussion possibly next year. But we're gonna have to see a lot.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, Tannehill had a down year. The 2 years before, he was a quarterback one. So
Yeah.
this
And
isn't a
and
this
and
isn't
an
an
efficient player.
inevitability that Willis wins this job in next year.
Right.
Tannehill can do enough. I mean, he's led them to a playoff team and the 1 seed. He's clearly doing enough.
Yeah. He's a good quarterback that did have a down year, and part of that was AJ Brown and Julio Jones not being on the field. And now they've
And
got
Derrick
Traylon
Henry
Burks.
going down as well.
Yeah. And now they've got Traylon Burks, Robert Woods when he is back from injury, and a healthy Derrick Henry. And they put a back behind Henry that makes more sense than what they were trying to do last year. So
And
it's
I don't want to discredit this, but like the best years of Tannehill's career so far has been with Johnny Smith and some electric tight end play, and they went away from that last year and didn't value it as much. Went for the more star-studded receiving core. Didn't work out because of injury, but they didn't really fix that necessarily. But I do
hey,
think that
they drafted
maybe
Okonkwo, and he could be
yes,
that. He could
that's
be that.
definitely the mold.
Yep.
But I think just a little bit better health from the receivers and Henry, and we could be forgetting all the Malik Willis talk for the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Last note before we leave, we are 5 spots higher on Drew Lock. This doesn't make sense to me. I know there are Seattle quarterback trade rumors, but everything that comes out of the mouths of the Seattle front office is that they don't want, or they're always looking to add to the quarterback room, but they do believe in Drew Lock. So I think with the chance of Drew Lock starting even 6 games this year, you have to rank him inside your top 36 at the very
Yeah.
least because he's going to return value. You may be able to flip him. And that's really all Drew Lock is at this point, which is unfortunate because we are both Drew Lock believers. I think maybe he could have a decent year now that he's got a staff that does believe in him. But,
We'll see.
we're talking about belief a lot. It does matter, though. If your coaching staff doesn't believe in you, they're not going to put you in positions to succeed. And I think that was the case with Drew Lock. So I'm excited to see him play.
All I can think of is Ted Lasso now, so thanks.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna go watch that
yeah,
tonight.
smart.
All right. Any other notes?
Lastly, yeah, I was gonna say. Lastly, outside of these guys, guys of note, I would say we have Sam Howell at 44. I think that's a good price for him right now as a guy that could take over that job. Most likely next year. I do think there's a small outside chance that he could this year, but let's Marcus Mariota at 37, who is penciled in as a starter. Matt Corral at 38, who we're -5 on. So people have him in the top 36 because he does have a chance to start over Darnold. So people have him over Darnold for the most part. And then the last one I would say is Jordan Love, all the way at 46. The drastic fall of everyone's love of Jordan Love, assuming that Rodgers would be gone and he would take over. Now he's all the way down at 46 behind Gardner Minshew for us. The fact that Mason Rudolph is still on this list is atrocious. He was 49, but still.
Yeah, he's way down there. But I did want to mention with Corral, someone told me that it was a hot take that I said that Corral's ceiling is somewhere where Darnold has already been. And I truly I liked Corral as a prospect, but he had problems and he cannot do a full field read at this point. They simplified everything. If you're struggling with Darnold, who actually that was kind of his problem coming out too, is that they simplified a lot and he had half field reads. And you look at Corral and you say, well, he can be better. Based on what? Darnold was the better prospect. He was drafted higher. He has had 4 years in the NFL now. And so I think that the chances of Matt Corral going out and beating Sam Darnold are slimmer than the chances of Desmond Ridder beating out Marcus Mariota. And that's
By
why I have it
far.
ranked that way. So
Yeah, by far.
but it seems as though that's not how consensus. Oh, it is kind of how consensus has it. They're about the same area. So It is what it is. But yeah, rookie fever is there. Don't be overdrafting these rookie quarterbacks. The 2023 class is better. You may as well just pick a skill position if you're in a startup. If you're looking at like Corral and Malik and things like that.
I mean, if you have taxi squad and the startup, I think grabbing guys like Corral and Willis and Howell are great uses of the taxi squad spots, better than the wide receiver 4 or 5 on a team or running back 3 on a team, in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah, that's just not
Because
where they're going in drafts, though, man. Like
yeah, it all depends on the value, obviously, but
right.
quarterbacks will always have the greater chance to bring the most value. You're going to have a greater success at drafting a quarterback that went in the 3rd round of your rookie draft and be able to flip him for early 2nd, late 1st than you will a running back in that level.
Yeah,
it's just how it is.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Anything else to note before we get out of here?
Besides my ever-changing seating area, no, it's going to keep changing. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we're just gonna talk about your seating area, I think that might be.
Yeah, I don't want to talk
time to call it.
It's fine.
Our Marvel Talk segment this week is just go watch the Thor trailer because it looks fantastic. It just dropped right before we went live.
Yeah, it dropped. I didn't even know it dropped because it dropped so recently. So maybe next week we'll go over that quickly if we can get through the rankings for running backs a bit quicker.
Yeah. Also, Randy's not a Star Wars fan, but Obi-Wan comes out this week, so
don't hate Star Wars. Just literally never watched it, and there's so many that it's a daunting task.
It sure is. But all right, that'll do it. Next week we're going to be talking about running backs, I believe. We're just going to keep going through the positions, and then our content for the summer will follow. So we will be pretty consistent, I think, through the next few months. As we get into the 2022 NFL season. It's right around the corner at this point. Doesn't feel like it, but it kind of is. So, all right, man. Anything to add before we bounce?
No.
All right. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys next Monday. Later.